Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. If you're watching on YouTube, you can find out more about what we do at officehours.global. Our first hour is a general discussion about video and media production. Any questions that you might have about that. Second hour is usually something we want to spend a little bit more time on. Today, we're going to be talking about the studio that I'm building, and we're kind of brainstorming. I put 3D models up in Discord, and so we're going to brainstorm a little bit. I think a lot of people have been thinking about it. People keep on telling me in Discord, I've thought a lot about this, and so I said, don't tell me until Monday. So we'll be talking about it later in the hour. Tomorrow, we've got Harrison Mixbus. So Mixbus is a pretty cool mixing system that they're going to join us and talk to us a little bit and answer your questions about what they do. NeuralNet, which builds basically a video conferencing solution, kind of like OBS Ninja and things like that, but at a higher end, is going to be joining us on Wednesday. Michael Krasny is scheduled to join us on Thursday. Michael Krasny was the host for here in San Francisco for a show called Forum, and the second hour is actually based on his structure. so anyway, so we're hoping to have him on Thursday. He's scheduled, and so I'm always worried when I have someone like that come on. We're like, are they really going to make it? But we're really excited to have him. And then on Friday we have the founders of MakerPipe. So that should be, we're going to be talking about MakerPipe on Friday. A lot of us have started to use it, and so we're going to get the inside scoop of how it got started and what's happening there. Remember that Saturday is the long day. We'll have education, which is just really turning out to be a great 2 hours. We don't put that on YouTube. That starts at 8 o'clock. And then the Belfast Method at noon. We're going back to the Accidental Theater. There's a separate link in the emails that go out that tell you how to get there. And then remember that we are planning. We don't have it hard scheduled yet, but we are planning to do another cooking at 9 o'clock on Sunday, which is it's new for us. So and went really well yesterday. And we learned a lot. And I think we keep on scratching off the sharp edges. All right, let's. Now I am going to wander off. Liberty White, I'll still be here. I'll be on the panel. Liberty White is hosting Mondays from now on, in case so we're very excited. Everyone, this is her first live day as a host, and so she'll be hosting Mondays for us. And so we're really excited to have you. Welcome, Liberty.
Thank you so much, Alex. And let's get this party started.
All right.
First question.
And our first question today comes from Chris Fenwick in California, USA. And he asks, would Alex Lindsay like to elaborate on what was learned about power backups at the 09008 Office Hours 2 facility?
Alex?
I'm sure we could all benefit from this knowledge.
Alex?
Yeah, so we had a power outage over the weekend, and we have little blips here and there. And when we actually have major events in our facility, we actually rent generators, and so the generators are sitting outside as a backup, just to make sure. But on a day-to-day basis, we don't keep those generators up there. And so we had a power outage over the weekend that lasted a couple hours, but our UPSs lasted as long as we need to switch over to the generators. so not as long as they need to crest over that. So number one is there's a whole bunch of discussions about what is the minimum length of time that those generators need to be able to last. We're going to have something up, what are the permanent solutions for this? So we're working on those processes now to figure those out. Notifications and process and everything else. And so that's again, when we're doing events, we're all there. There's generators, there's power, there's things. But when we're not, having to go down, creates a displacement within the system. And what we got to see is all the things that reset when it goes down. Now, so almost everything that is in 090 was fine because everything's kind of hardwired and established. But the stuff in our little kit for office hours is not managed the same way as 090. And so anyway, so we lost all of the routing for our router and the MV16 and the ATEM and everything else. And so we're going to put that back together. There's a couple things. One is obviously we're going to get a better saving operation for all of that. Number two is that we're going to move all of the configuration to Isadora. So Isadora as a piece of software will know how it wants everything configured. And so we're going to take have less data actually in the edge and more in Isadora. So Isadora, when it wakes up, just tells the switcher and the router and the MV16 what it should be doing. And that would have been that would be more stable. So anyway, that's what we've learned, and that's what we're processing this week. So but that's also why we don't have a second stream today. Yeah, go.
I'm sorry. Is that just to streamline the reboot process? Is that what you're talking about?
Well, it streamlines it. It just gives us one version of the truth. Like, you don't have to have, there's no external dependency on it. So the whole system doesn't run without Isadora anyway. So there's no reason to have multiple setups in different places, to make that happen. So we're gonna, if you're already committed to a central system, you should be committed to the central system, taking over, and there shouldn't be. It's just multiple versions of the truth is what that is, and not good. That's all I got.
Thank you, Alex. Can we get the next question, please?
Our next question today comes from James Hutchinson in Dublin, in Ireland, and he asks, if you don't have the funds to buy once, cry once for a camera and are happy to buy many, cry all the time, what lenses and lens systems would you recommend so the glass can be reused from kit camera to Blackmagic design 4K to 6K?
All right, Chris.
Well, the philosophy of buy once, cry once is designed to actually spend less money overall. And I think that's the important part of, and I know that this is a question about lenses, and I'm sure Jason will have plenty to say about that. But I personally am very reticent about encouraging people to spend money. I might be different than Alex. Alex will always say, I'm an expensive friend. You can ask Doug Ferguson. I've told him a million times, dude, don't spend the money. I don't recommend it. But by holding off and buying what you really want/need, you will find that in the long run, you'll actually spend more money. So the idea of, if you don't have the funds to buy once, cry once, you actually do. You just don't have that money yet. It's good to wait sometimes. And now Jason will tell you about lenses.
Yeah, to elaborate a little bit more on that first point, buy once, cry once is the way to go if this is something you are committed to doing as a professional. Buying something that costs 40% what the thing you actually know you need 3 times is considerably more money than just doing it correctly. But I love the idea of crying all the time, and you stick with us at office hours, I guarantee whatever your budget is, we'll beat it. Personally, I have a 24 to 70, I have a 70 to 200, I have a 100 prime, a 50 prime, and one of the wide angles, I want to say a 24 to 35. Mine are Canon, and I just kind of inherited it from my photo work, and it's lended itself very nicely to the 6K workflow. I need to correct you on the 4K and the 6K. The 4K does not use Canon lenses. It uses MFT or micro four thirds. And before you think they can all be used for zoom and focus, they can't. Be very, very careful. The website, blackmagic.com/support, go in there and you will see exactly the ones that can be run through and controlled by your switcher.
Awesome. Mitchell?
First of all, there's no crying on this panel. Nobody's allowed to cry. We don't do it here. But if you have to, don't buy a prime before you buy a zoom. That's my best advice. If you have one camera and you buy a prime and then you find out, oops, I didn't get the right prime, then at least you have the zoom to fall back on. But in my case, I bought the prime first. It was like a 20 millimeter, and realized that I needed a bit more focusing distance. So I switched to a zoom. And then I bought a ZV-1 Sony, and because I was in the Sony architecture, I was able to pop that prime right on there, and it's sitting very nicely right here. So that's how it worked for me. I sniffled a little bit, but I didn't full on cry.
There it is. Thank you. Next question.
We go next to Mitchell Hill in Wilmington, Delaware, and he asks, what kind of rules do you have for working from home?
Okay, Rupert?
Well, a couple of general things. I mean, I like a routine, so I try and keep, a strict routine between, working from home and just being at home. Beyond then, outside of any special projects that need extra time. And then space, I think a dedicated space to work in is important, so you can kind of step into work and step out of work. I like to separate my equipment so I don't mix my personal computers with my work computers and vice versa. And then just as a general rule, I don't subject anybody to poor audio or poor video.
Okay, Alex.
For me, I one of the things just to add to what Rupert already said there is I have a schedule. I use iCal heavily, so my whole week is scheduled out of what I'm going to do, including any kind of breaks that I'm going to take or anywhere I'm going to go. I really kind of during a work week, I keep a pretty tight schedule from. For me, I mean, because I get up early, my schedule runs from about 5 a.m. until 7 p.m. And now that may say I'm going to go out and do something, or I'm going to go do this, or I'm going to go do that. But I keep track of what it is so that I can get a sense of what I was actually doing. It's really easy for your home life to become unstructured, and then you don't actually get anything done. And so you want to be conscious too that you're not doing anything, and say I'm not doing anything between 1 and 2 or whatever that is. But if you let it all turn into a fog, it becomes a little bit more complicated. And so the other thing that I do is I don't actually take any of my equipment out of my, other than like when I do the streaming for cooking, none of my gear is outside of my office. So all of everything, like all computers, everything, the only thing I walk out of my office with is my phone. So when I'm out of the office, when I'm out of my office space, which I have a separate space, I'm out of the thing. And as just like Rupert, this is what I look like when I'm in meetings. Like I don't casually come into meetings with my phone somewhere in the living room or something like that unless something breaks.
Okay, thank you, Mitchell.
Yep, that's true, Alex. And you know what? When I walk into my office, it's like walking into the TARDIS. It's bigger inside than it is on the outside. And I'm very serious about getting time well spent. But like Rupert was saying, having routines is very important. And I've been working a long time from my home because I chose to. And I also choose for the environment that I want. So the combination of making sure that I'm in a proper mindset when it comes time to do work, but at the same time, if I'm not in the proper mindset and I have the option of goofing off a little bit, I leave the room, go down to my entertainment center and goof off until I feel like working again. And sometimes you can get away with that, sometimes you can't. But I find that the most destructive part about working from your home, please take note of this, everybody, is your refrigerator. Watch out for it.
That is so true. Lois?
The difference for a person who is professional and working there all the time, like many of the people on this panelist, and those people who occasionally do work, I only have one computer. It's going to do both things. I have to change my mindset. Am I working or am I playing? But really the most important thing is be nice to your family. You know, my workstation is in the middle of the living room. That's not very cool. So maybe I'll build a new office.
Okay, Tobias?
I don't read on the couch, and I have a chair with no back to make sure I'm in good posture, and I can't get to the bathroom without passing through that dreaded kitchen. So when I was fully working from home, I set a rule that I had to have a glass of water before I could take a bite of food as a buffer to going straight to the food source.
That's a really good rule there. Jeffrey?
For me, and of course, I don't have children running around the house, but for me, I try not to make rules per se, because rules are always something that you end up breaking. You end up kicking yourself for not following your own rules and going from there. With that said, I've been doing this for a long time, 15 years now, from working at home. And for me, things just change from week to week. Like one week I would have been in California for an event, and the next week I'd be at home doing some home videos and things like that. And so being able to set certain times and certain guidelines is just not really always possible to do. But just like I believe Rupert said, having a dedicated area is the most important thing, and being able to kind of letting the others know that, hey, I'm doing this, and I can't be disturbed during this time, with a calendar or something like that is always a good idea.
Thank you. Jason.
This may come as a shock to some of the panelists that know me, but I am highly ADHD. So the habits that I have had to develop are the result of hard-won face plants that really can become deleterious to my life and my lifestyle. So to that end, for example, if I'm going to take a business call, I love walking, and I will simply walk around the block, walk around the yard, pace around my house. As a general rule, I do not sit and talk. It's just never the way that I've been. A dedicated space, I think we are at consensus on, and it is exceptionally important. Other than that, I guess since 2009, when I started my company, yeah, it has worked for me, but the vast majority of my build hours, at least for me, are still FaceTime and on site. I'm doing things. Talking about doing it is the stuff that has always happened at my home, and I couldn't be happier.
That's good. I'll add that an Apple Watch has helped so that it's a reminder to stand, because that's all of us. We sit all day long. So thank you all. And next question, please.
The next question is from Scott Mueller in Germantown, New York. And he says, I have long suspected it by his office hours background, but his garage camera in after hours has confirmed that Rupert McRae is the most organized person on the planet. Can you please share your advanced sorting system behind you?
Rupert?
I don't know about on the planet. I do try, but I know I can't get away for much longer without doing some kind of tour video, and I will put that together. But the bar's set quite high for that for me. If you look at like Adam Savage's channel online, that's kind of where I'm going with that. But in terms of this system back here, I think I've explained it a couple of times. But I do have the same system in my garage. This is the base of this is actually the IKEA Ivar stuff. I think I've talked about that before, but it's all modular and you can get it in different sizes and stuff and all kinds of different accessories and whatnot. I don't really go for the accessories so much rather than just the structure and the shelves. And then back here, I use these like 12-inch tote things, and just for different things. I like the transparent stuff because you can see what's inside. And then in the garage, I just do have more larger totes with lids. But I find sticking to one system is great because I've moved a couple of times and reconfigured spaces, and you can just use one system to configure the arrangement that you want. But I promise, do a tour one of these days.
That would be awesome. Next question.
The next question comes from Mitchell Hill in Wilmington, Delaware, and he asks, what kind of cameras are you using for office hours and why?
Alex?
Yeah, I'm using a BlackMagic 6K with a 24-70 L series lens. That's our standard issue for most of what we do for the higher end kit. We have like 15 of these. And so I use it mostly because it's what all our high end kits use. And so I'm constantly getting better at using it. So that's what I use.
All right, Alex.
The other Alex, I think.
Goldner, yes.
Yes.
Alex.
Your audio's not coming through, Alex.
Can't hear you, Alex.
Let's go to David, and Alex, we'll see if we can get you back in on the tail end.
Sure. I'm running a Sony a6400 with a Sigma 60mm 1.4 lens. And I basically chose them because I'm not at Blackmagic level yet. And I get a really nice quality picture, and the focus is nice and sharp, but quick focus.
Mitchell.
I'm in the Sony world too, like David, and I'm using an FX3 Sony because I could, with a 20-74 millimeter Sony GM lens on it. I'm running the Sony Cinetone, and I've got a a Pro Mist black filter on there. I guess that's an 18. I think that's what it is, just to try to make my face look a little better than it is. The other camera is a Sony ZE10, and I can swap lenses if I need to. So that seems to be serving me pretty well.
All right, George.
This is the Pocket Camera Cinema 4K. with Sigma 16 to 35, running at 1.4. And I just love Blackmagic gear, so that's why I'm using it. But it serves the bill for an awesome web camera.
Yeah, we've got a lot of Blackmagic folks here. Tobias, what are you using?
I'm on the Logitech Brio, and that's because I haven't gotten into the real camera game yet, but also I have a faux teleprompter situation with it, in that it's just on a very skinny tripod and lands in the middle of the screen, and I can move the Zoom boxes around it and have the teleprompter feel without setting up a teleprompter.
Okay, Tony?
I am using the XS Max iPhone, and I'm also using it with Filmic Pro. That is connected to my ATEM Mini, and it's going into, that is all set up with my teleprompter. And so that's my setup, and I'm very happy with it right now. Low end, low cost, used iPhone.
Nice. And Josh?
And I have a Sony a7 III with a portrait lens. It works well with the Interatron teleprompter that I'm using. My second camera is a ZV-1, and that helps with the little remote control. I can do close-up shots of things. If I want like a larger point of view, then I can use the Avaya camera. Let's see, there we go. So it gives up different point of view. You can actually do different set points, and they seem to complement each other pretty well.
All right, Alex, we'll try again.
I'm using a Logitech Brio, so it's a 4K camera, and I unfortunately use its own software, which is not very good, which sometimes causes problems. I do have an old Canon 5D Mark II that I might try out with Canon web camera if I can find my 24-70L lens, but I don't know where it is.
All right, next question.
We're going back to Dublin in Ireland for the next question from James Hutchinson, who says, the office hours 5,000 and 20,000 studio shows were great. How about the $100,000 studio?
John?
Alex, I ran out of money and time on building this. I think the real number's around 250,000, which you've said in the past. So this is 3 Blackmagic Ursa 12Ks with expensive lenses, another Blackmagic 6K just to have as another rover, and then the X32 as the sound center, and then a Constellation as the key, and then room prep I just threw 15, but it would be way more than that. So I think that the real number is 250. Alex?
Alex?
Yeah. I think that if we're gonna do another one, let's just go ahead to go to 250,000. like I take your 100,000, I raise you 150,000. So we'll work on one in the future where we do someone just needs to put it into the thing. I mean, we could do 100,000 and then do another. I mean, you could do it at any number, so it could be 50,000, 100,000. So maybe we'll do 100,000 next. But there's a $250,000 and $1 million version of this that we probably want to think about, and we can all dream. And I've actually built some of these, and so it does, the infrastructure changes dramatically as you keep on going up these notches, and so like you have to change the way your substructures work and everything else. And so I think it's worth us having the conversation to think about it, even if we're not doing that right now. Just understanding what the difference is would be useful.
Definitely. Next question.
The next question comes from Jens in Sandpoint, Idaho. And he says, I have HDMI and SDI from a PTZ Optics camera into an ATEM. HDMI has been super stable, but SDI goes through a microconverter and it blinks or is just a black output. What's causing this?
And Jason.
Okay, well, let me start by saying that's great. And it's going to be something similar to your inputs are strange, your cabling is strange, your outputs are strange. I don't think it's very high order. Check your power, check your cables, make sure that you're doing the vast majority of your run with SDI and then converting it at the very end back to HDMI, and then just switch out all of your cables and again update the firmware on these guys because they're these do not last forever.
All right, next question.
Next question is from Tobias Moss in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And he asks, in a more controversial subject area, religion, politics, etc., how would you keep an office hours type Mukana Q&A show safe from trolls, bots, and all types of malfeasance?
Tobias?
Yeah, I daydream after seeing Office Hours of a show called The Great Jewish Ask Me Anything, where Jewish experts are on the panel and whoever comes. But know that Jewish things often attract malfeasance. So it's a curiosity.
Alex?
There's a lot of tools built into the current Mukana that allow us to do what we call troll suppression. So, us asking you for one of the things that we will probably do in the new year is get rid of the email options, to log in. So we'll want your phone number only. That'll be the only way to get in. And that's partially because it allows us to tighten that up. It just makes it harder because you have to keep on coming up with new phone numbers, and it's very easy on the back end. You don't really see it on the back end from the front end, but it's very easy for us to kick somebody out and ban them. We also have a whole slew of controls is related to, it's very easy for people to flag as well. So flagging and the way our system, the future of Mukana was all based on trolls, just in case you're wondering. There's a whole new version that'll be coming out sometime next year. The whole infrastructure was based on trolling behaviors. And so, and how to minimize them, and so it won't be perfect. Nothing's perfect, but it is, I would say that it takes the light approach that most online forums have and inserts a lead pipe in the middle of it. so as far as how we deal with trolls. So so I'm not in. You'll find that I believe from all the events that we've done, about 3% of the population creates 90% of the problems, and I'm not interested in trying to include them. The 3% that want to be trouble, I'm just interested in cutting them out. And everything's much better if we just get rid of them. And so we're not constrained by the fairness rules that Facebook and YouTube and other people try to maintain. We just want to have a great conversation. And if you undermine that, we have tools to get rid of you. And that's, and it is, I'm not, it's a much more, much rougher version of what it is. Many of those tools are already hidden inside of Mukana. We just don't have to use them very often because of the way that we aggregate people. So the other thing, the way that we handle this right now is to get into office hours. You have to, what we call, you have to go up the mountain and then cross the rickety bridge and go through the dangerous forest to get to anything that allows you to interact with us. And that generally filters out most people because most people are just strafing. They're going by and it's something that's easy to cause trouble with. If we make you actually work at it, it takes a lot of the fun out of it. But the worst part is that once you get in there, there's other tools that are there to get rid of you too. So there's, all I'll say is that this version is already pretty useful in that area. And the next version is really built for exactly what you're talking about, is being able to have conversations where, that can be sliced and diced, out of that system.
Our next question comes from Bo Caudle in Charleston, South Carolina, and they ask, what's the optimal setup for presenting a keynote presentation on Zoom? Do you remotely operate a Mac Mini via an iPad?
Jason?
I will answer with the recognition that there are 3 other people after me and only go for the latter. My answer is no. I am good enough with Keynote that the keystrokes involved when I'm doing it over Zoom are much easier to think about and to handle, and I have enough display. I have more desktop than desk, and there are 2 big desks in this room. So to that end, there's no need for an additional display that has touch interactivity.
And Rupert?
If you're dealing with remote presenters or people who need to control that presentation remotely, they did actually just build in a new feature into Zoom itself for advancing slides, which means you can do that without having to give a remote speaker complete control over a local machine. So it is there in Zoom just as a feature if that suits your use case.
David?
we played with that on the test kitchen last week, and just know that it works, but it doesn't work automatically. You have to turn that on in the settings. You have to do that before you start the meeting. But I use, when I'm presenting a page flip, Dragonfly, which is a foot pedal. And what's really nice about it is that I have my hands free, and if I just click, then it will advance the slide and bring up whatever I want to show. So this allows me to have my hands free and use this to advance slides.
That's creative. Jeffrey?
So being on both ends of presentations, not only giving a presentation, but also recording somebody else giving a presentation. The one thing that I really like to tell people is if you've got that second computer, go and you got enough internet bandwidth, use that second computer to have your presentation on, and then you can bring in two Zoom windows, or we can have one Zoom window with you and then one, of course, doing the screen share. I like to, it depends on, once again, bandwidth and things like that. And of course, it also matters if, depending on what type of Zoom call you're on, if you're still 640 by 360, or if you're all the way up to 1080p, then you can get some really good quality just by having those two separate machines. That way, if one crashes, the other one can continue on from there. There have been times where I have had to control the presentation on their end, and yeah, I haven't tried this new system yet, but it's kind of fun to do, to try and connect up to another machine to be able to switch forward and back, and not easy sometimes.
Alex?
Yeah, so Keynote, the remote control of Keynote is actually really good. So you can, if you need it to be local to a location, you can do a remote driving of it, but you can also run it right through Zoom. Now, I run it through a switcher, so I have, I don't have it quite set up right now, but usually when I'm doing a full-on presentation, when you're talking about Optimum, and I have to do a class, or I need to do a really high-end presentation, I've actually got 2 computers and a Wacom tablet that are connected to the whole system. One computer is running running Keynote, and it also has a video input that's being driven from the video output of my ISO, of my extreme ISO. And the reason I do that is so that I can be picture in picture with me, so I can actually animate my position inside a Keynote where I'm going to be for every slide. So that's why one of the reasons you want to kind of do it locally. The output of that goes back into the extreme, which then cuts to that. When I cut to that, it allows me to then cut to it, and I'm just sending video to the far end. The reason for that, one of the reasons for that, is that if you share your Keynote through a switcher, it kind of doesn't necessarily take over the screen for them, and they don't see you if they do, go ahead and zoom up, do a spotlight. If you do a spotlight for it, they won't see you anymore the way they do with the screen capture. You do get better frame rate that way, though. And so then once you do that, the reason that I go back into the switcher is now I can do draw over. So I can essentially I can have a slide that has me in it as video, animating from place to place to place and doing what it needs to do. At any point in time, I can do telestrator over top of any slide there. I can also cut to a whiteboard and draw a little bit. The big thing for me is that if I'm not going to interact with you during my presentation, I'm going to send you a video, even from Keynote. I'm just going to record me doing the thing, and I'll send it to you. Then we can have a conversation about it later. If I'm going to present and interact with you, then I need to have the tools to interact. And so I also use this. One of the reasons I use a plain background is so I'll cut to myself and I draw I just go like this. I draw in the open space. So this becomes my blackboard as well, or whiteboard, or whatever board. So those are when we talk about Optimum, it's for me, that's 2 Mac Minis and a switcher and another digitizer and a camera and Wacom tablet.
All right, John.
The best presentations I've ever seen in my life haven't used slides. Don't use slides. End of story.
I'll only say one thing about that. So you don't want it to look like slides. You don't want lists of things. Like, I never use bullet points, ever. But like ever, never, never, ever, ever, never, never, ever use a list on a slide, because that immediately that is like, hello, I'm going corporate. I'm boring. I'm not going to do this well. you know, you can turn off your brain, you know, when you do that, because it's just, and don't put, I almost never have more than 20 words on a slide ever. I mean, like, it is like any text you see on a slide is me giving up. You know, if I can't do it with images, I try to do the whole thing with images. What I will say is Keynote is incredibly powerful as a diagramming. Like, I'm going to show you a bunch of graphics the way I would have if I had the time to animate them all and build a video. But that's how you should look at it. Like, I'm watching Nova and there's a whole bunch of things happening, and it does help to see something while you're hearing somebody. Like, here's some examples, and here's some, it does help your brain pull it in. But you never want any element to show up at a time when you're not talking to it. So it should show up when you bring it up. And if you're trying to make a point, there's 3 points that appear. That does help people remember those things. So a slide deck itself can be useful, but not the way 99.99999% people use it. So I agree with John, 99.999%. But if you can make it visual, and then what I've been working on next is being able to go back and forth. So I have this thing where I'm a little box, but then I can cut, and some of the slides are sitting over top of me. So literally, you know, like little things pop up here and around. I've done whole presentations where the objects are appearing around me, kind of like the lower Fenwick, except imagine every slide doing things and animating around me and over top of me and everything else. The problem with that is actually not that it's not good. It's that it's so distracting to the viewers that they can't remember what I said, because they think it's so cool and what they just saw. That you get to the end and they're like, that was so amazing. And so you have to be careful of the shock and awe level, because it can get to a point where it takes the people away from the message.
And if you're looking for a good resource, I believe it's Guy Kawasaki has a book on just presentations, and that'll just kind of help think through in a lot of what has been already said. And I know questions are piling up, so let's go to the next question.
Our next question is from Danny Law in Malaysia. I heard during the recent Amazon Web Services event that they announced a new M1 Mac Mini instance. Is it still much more costly to run a Mac instance in AWS?
George?
So the answer is yes. It is pretty costly to still run it. Obviously, without me trying to explain the whole thing, Mac Minis are really on AWS is really meant for developers that are looking to develop. Like for many of us, you can't just spin up an instance. It's going to be really costly. It's currently in preview, the new M1, but it'll be great for them to really bring this to the masses eventually, and hopefully it'll be sooner than later. Rupert might have more to say on it.
And Rupert?
Yes, so like George says, I think the cost structure isn't a whole lot different to how it was. They've done Mac Minis for a while. It's now they're doing M1s also, and the cost can add up. There's like minimum, I think, runtime for those instances, and lead time maybe even also. And you need to watch out for criteria around whether they can integrate with all your availability groups and security groups, because I think there's some prerequisites there of where they can operate and what overall AWS infrastructure they can integrate with.
All right, next question.
Our next question is from Scott Mueller in Germantown, New York. And he says, what do you think are the minimum PC specs for a solid Isadora media server or a vMix computer? Will a higher end BeeLink cut it, or should I try to build a tower?
Josh?
I'm just going to comment on the building a rig. The vMix will require a GPU. And if you happen to have one laying around, congratulations, but they're made of unobtainium right now. So typically it's going to be something you can build. That might be one of the primary considerations as far as what GPU is considered in your pre-built system as to what you choose.
And Jeffrey?
Yeah, I know some BeeLinks do come with discrete graphics as well as integrated graphics. And so you could get away with a high-end BeeLink on a vMix. I can't speak for Isadora because I haven't used it. You can get away with it, but it also really depends on what you're putting into that BeeLink. It's gonna be basically a one-camera situation into vMix. If you want something that's gonna switch multiple cameras, do graphics and all that other stuff, you'll want to get in a good desktop with a really good video card, such as the NVIDIA 3080, or and just more processors, because the BeeLinks are gonna give you maybe at the best 6 cores worth of processing, and you'll definitely want to go 8 to 12 cores, easy.
All right, and Rupert, real quick.
Yeah. So Isadora, if you're not processing video through it, you can get away with something much more lightweight. But the moment you get into videos where you're going to need the higher specs.
All right, next question.
Slalok Miguel Lopez Waterman in Astoria, New York asks, can we discuss the purpose of the 5 to 6 a.m. hour? At one point, it was about helping people with their audio and video chains and helping people understand how to cut or manage the show. Is this all still the case?
Alex?
I think what we did is there used to only be a 5 to 6 a.m. And then right afterwards a 9 to 10 or whatever. Now it's 21 hours that is available to people to work on their kits and process. I do think that I agree, now that you brought up that question, is that we probably ought to, if someone comes in and says, I would like to test my system at 5 a.m. between 5 and 6, we probably should, whatever conversation we're having, should pause to do it. The real time to do that is between 6 and 6:30. So, I mean, if you want more time, you've got 21 hours to do it. If you want to just check in and see how things are going, 6 a.m. to 6:30 is a bunch of people that are all here ready to test it within the system. And it is absolutely anybody, we should always be stopping any conversation between 6 and 6:30 to work on people's kits. I mean, that is the reason we open up the doors at 6. So we can be, everyone should always view us as just chit-chatting, while we're just chit-chatting, waiting for you to ask questions. So from 6 to 6:30 is the absolute, 5 to 6 is great, but really there's 21 hours for you to come in and check your kit, to make it work.
That's a really good reminder. Ari?
Yeah, I'd also just like to take the opportunity to perhaps expand on the question and the hours and say that this is what after hours is for. And perhaps there are some people who have not been in after hours or are a bit camera shy. So, and I can understand how with stuff that goes on, chatting, trying things out and stuff like that, and it feels like a club of sorts. And again, maybe people who are shy don't break into that. Please do. Please raise your digital hand if you don't want to break into the conversation, and get your audio chain, camera, or whatnot fixed, because that's what we're there for.
And Alex?
The last thing I'll say, I mean, I completely agree with Ari, is that, feel free that if after hours is hidden at the bottom of the emails that you get and you can jump in. My recommendation is to watch for a little while. There's two things. One is, if you need help, after hours is the place to do that. It's open 21 hours a day. It is there for you to ask questions and figure stuff out. There's a handful of hours that we do something specific, but almost the whole day is there to just do Q&A and figure out problems, whether that, of all kinds. The other thing I'll just call out to, and I think that we're already very good at this, and by the way, you want to raise your digital hand inside of after hours if you want to talk, and you'll learn that as you watch it. But my request is that, and so far it's been done really well, is always to stay focused for the folks that are in after hours, to always be inclusive, to always, like, if you see someone raising their hand or someone asking, especially if they haven't quite figured out what they do with their digital hand, just always make sure that they feel welcome to ask the questions that they have and help them through those processes. And so far that's been done really well. Sometimes we get caught up in meaningless conversations and aren't paying attention to people who need help. So that's the only thing we need to think through.
All right, next question.
Next question is from Jack B in Phoenix, Arizona. He says, I'm seeing very affordable $500 BlackMagic Pocket Camera 2.5Ks in the secondhand marketplace. Is it worth it if you don't have a 6K yet and are waiting for the budget?
All right, Jason, real quick.
Jack, buddy, I'm about to save you $500. BlackMagic was still just kind of finding their feet. These are not good cameras, and the market knows that. Don't go there.
And Alex?
I own 4 of them, or I used to own 4 of them. They're trash. Don't buy them. Like it's the same thing that Jason said. They're just I think we almost never got them into a production because they were so unstable. So yeah, don't do it.
And there you have it. Next question.
Next question is from Tobias Moss in Minneapolis, Minnesota. In a bright room, what can you do to help subject separate from background?
Mitchell?
Well, Tobias, looking at your picture there, it looks like you got a window to your left that's letting a bit of sunshine in there, and it doesn't look half bad. But the best trick is to try, first of all, keep the light from behind you. Try to keep it in front of you, and you can always use a bounce card, just a piece of white foam core to mitigate some of the harshness of the light that's on you, or a key light. And it could be anything from a regular light to, excuse me for reaching behind me. I know it's here somewhere. One of these little guys, 99 bucks. It's a LumaCube. You just need a little bit of punch there for you, but I think that would solve the problem for you.
Okay, and Lois?
Well, one thing is to know what color your hair is and what color your background is. And here I have dark hair, but I have these two silver spots. So if I had a backlight here, I'd comb my hair the other direction so that silver would glow and that would separate me from my background. A lot of it depends on your personal situation. And I would say, come to after hours sometime, bring your setup, your lights, your whatever you got, and everybody will have an opinion. You may not like them, but they'll have opinions for you.
Very true. Josh?
Yeah, +1 on what everyone else said. So if lighting is abundant, you could try cutting the light. So that will give you a contrast. Also, like Lois mentioned, color contrast. So, what you wear as far as your clothes or your shirt, make it contrast to the background. The other thing you can do is depth of field. And that's the more expensive route. But yeah, if you have something that has a larger sensor or a larger aperture, that'll give a contrast from you to your background.
And Alex?
Yeah, I was going to repeat what Josh said. Depth of field is how we usually attack that. Is just try to blur everything out, and that'll make you snap forward. And oftentimes a brighter background actually looks great in kind of a very out of focus view.
Okay, next question.
Our next question is from Andre Doll in Berlin, Germany. How do I bring in meters like Youlean into a meeting with a PC? And how do I route my audio so that Youlean hears me and Zoom's audio?
Jason?
Can I just say that everywhere else on the internet, it's, how do I do that on a Mac? And this is the only place where someone's like, wow, that thing you're doing is really cool. Can it be done on Windows? I would say vocal meter potato, and what you need is either a dedicated computer or probably a much more advanced than a soundbite way of routing your audio to get there with any other thing. But the good thing is that Windows basically will allow you to include your microphone in your input. So once you have something like vocal meter potato, you can actually record yourself, and it won't auto kick that feedback.
Josh?
I'm actually doing that right now. So, yes, I'm using voice meter potato, but the operating function in that is actually the audio cable. So Youlean is designed to take the audio from you. I don't know if that's why I call it Youlean or not, but whereas there is another meter, Orban. So Orban is set opposite. So it listens to, you can set that to external sources by default. But since you asked about Youlean, and I do appreciate the interface, the idea is to assign that to your audio cable, in which case you can send it out to it. So it'll think it's coming from you. And that's how I attach this to the Zoom panel.
All right, next question.
The next question is from Douglas Carmichael, who asks, what would you think of focused second hours on IT topics relevant to our industry, such as IT process automation, virtualization, or networking?
Rupert, real quick.
Yeah, I think just as with all these second hour suggestions, it's about getting them into Discord and letting people vote on them there or give thumbs up. But on these subjects, it's probably about keeping it focused and figuring out who might the experts be in that topic, or maybe a guest vendor, something like that.
Jeffrey?
Yeah, it's really interesting how these two parts starting to converge together. It's just amazing. So, bringing in somebody, I agree. If it's something that the group wants, that's where Discord comes in and makes the ruling, and then we can get somebody dedicated to talk about networking, talking about virtualization. We already have done AWS stuff, so we know that that's going to be a very high topic. So, yeah. That's where you go to Discord and vote up the topic.
All right, next question.
The next question is from Oliver Hurlrund in Lehman, Germany. What software can I use on Windows to add a LUT to a live video on Teams?
Jason?
It can be done through OBS. My strong recommendation is that you get the larger version of one of these, which can allow you to embed a LUT. It will do it more quickly. There's no slow down and there's no tax on your processor. This is a hardware process that really shouldn't be done, in my opinion, via software if you have the LUT you need.
And Rupert?
Just like Jason says, you can do it in OBS, and if you did it that way, you bring it into Teams using the virtual camera driver, but you can apply the LUT either to the source or to your scene.
Hey, we're going to run a little bit over just to make sure we wrap up these questions, and if we can get the next one, Dennis.
Okay, Scott Mueller in Germantown, New York asks, what determines how many ZoomISO outputs will look good through NDI? Which system needs better specs, the ZoomISO Mac or the PC with vMix? And what's my focus here, graphics card, system RAM, or CPU?
Alex?
I actually think, and now that I read through it, I'm not sure if I can answer it completely because I don't use a lot of NDI, but generally for our output, it has been the bandwidth. So it tends to like, oh, you don't have enough bandwidth to do this, and I'm gonna step down. And then after that, I believe that it's going to be the GPU, in number of cores in your CPU. So I know that Zoom pays a lot of attention to those cores. The person to ask what you want to do is watch to see if Andy Carluccio, or even reach out to Andy to find out, but he can probably give you a more detailed answer, and he's in our group inside of Discord. So, and he's the developer of ZoomISO. So I would ask him.
Okay, next.
The next question is from Alex 4D Golner in London in the UK. Does anyone plan to attend the online version of IBC this week? And he shares the link.
Okay, Alex.
I may try to strafe by and see if anything looks. Mostly, what I do is I go in and look at what they did. So I'll probably be in there for a couple minutes for different sessions, just to see how they did. I don't have a high expectation. I think that if they had started last year and gone, we're just going to commit to a digital format and did something useful, but even then, I don't know if they could do it. I think the big challenge for a lot of these organizations in general is that what they were doing physically didn't really work that well. It just happened to be a bunch of us were showing up anyway. And so what's really happening is they have to now the content actually has to be valid. And I think that they're having a hard time with that because so they're being forced into a system that is requiring them to actually be good at what they do. And most of these presentations, including the ones that I was on oftentimes, were never really that watchable.
Okay, next question.
Okay, Liberty, Tony Mobley has this next question for you. He's in Union, Georgia, and he asks, what's your opinion on being the host of Office Hours today, Liberty?
My opinion is that it's great. It's bringing all the skills together, managing the back end, following cues and everything, but it's wonderful to be here. And I have to say, shout out to Lois, who is cutting the show. So we've got a dynamic team behind the scenes. Alex?
And I just want to say, I think Liberty's doing a great job. It's really exciting. And so really, really well done so far. And I'm looking forward to you just continuing to move forward with Mondays.
Thank you so much. And on to the next question.
Absolutely. It's all great fun. All right. Alex has the next question. Alex 4D Gulner in London. Has anyone here attended any Apple Tech Talks in the last few weeks? What did you think of the content? What did you think of how they were organized?
Jason?
I cannot help but harmonize on my PowerPoint or our PowerPoint discussion from a little bit earlier in saying a great deal of my job has to do with explaining things that are highly technical to people who are deliberately not technical. They're well educated, they're typically very successful, but something that's really technical in a way that explains to them why it costs what it costs and in turn is worth what it's worth. Apple is the very, very best at the world at this. So although I have not attended this year's set of Tech Talks, they are truly the standards bearer, and I will watch Apple explain anything because they explain how to explain better than anyone else.
Alex?
Yes, I went to one of the AR experience sessions, and this evening soon I'm going to be going to the object capture session. They're pretty good, I think, structurally. The content was really interesting, stuff at all levels, but timing wise it was very good. Out of the hour there was about 15 to 20 minutes of presentation, maybe 25, and then it was all Q&A with real answers and different people answering questions. So I think structurally they're very good with real information, but lots of really good examples ready to show. It just would have been nice if we'd been able to copy all the text of the questions and answers or have them sent to me afterwards. But apart from that, I'm now being picky because it was really, really good.
All right, and John?
I went to the one that Alex recommended, which was the AR one, and I learned about Reality Converter. The content was good. The production value, a bunch of these guys sitting at their house with bad backgrounds and bad lighting and bad microphones, wasn't so good.
And Alex?
Yeah, I think that I watched a bunch of them, and I think that overall, what I thought really worked was nothing's overlapping, so that you can really, you're choosing what time, and there are different parts of the day. They had some in Singapore for the Asian market. They had ones that were only in for Korea. We got an open mic somewhere.
Yes.
There we go. So I thought that they did a pretty good job as far as organizing it in a way that we could do it. I wish that the ICSs were automatically in my calendar. I missed like half of them because they emailed me some update and it didn't automatically go into my calendar once I signed it up. So I had to get very mechanical about putting that in. I think that, to Alex's point, I think that the keeping the presentation short was great. I would have just made the videos ahead of time. Just posted the video. I would have said, "Hey, welcome to it. Here's the presentation we're going to do, or we're not going to do. Here's the video you can watch beforehand, which is 10 minutes of whatever," and then just made it all Q&A. That's, because I don't think that, watching that, doing it live over WebEx is not the best way to present your information ever. It's so bad. So anyway, so while the content itself was good, the quality of it was pretty low, with, as room mics and bad video. I would have just pre-produced all of that and then just opened it up to Q&A, which I think that the quality of the mics, for the most part, would have been good enough just for Q&A.
All right, next question.
And this is our last question for the first hour, which comes from Keenan Campbell in Princeton, Illinois. Princeton, Illinois. As the popularity of after hours grows, can Alex discuss and reiterate the etiquette and purpose, in particular, blindly interrupting the room?
Yeah, I think that, in general, I think that we probably ought to build, I think we're now to a point where we could probably build a couple things that we send you if you join after hours, like, "Hey, welcome. Here are the things that you should probably do." And definitely jumping in and say, and starting to talk is probably not pretty high up on our list. I do think that we want to be open to everyone doing that. I think that we do want to kind of build, more and more muscles around. If people want to say hi to everyone, we just have them raise their digital hand. And I think that part of that's people learning how to do that, just learning to raise your digital hand. If you want to say, if you want to just jump into something, is to, I think that we're kind of, it's like walking into a room and we just need to kind of accept walking into the room and yelling at the top of your lungs because there's 50 people in there and you're saying, you're saying whatever you're saying, look at this or do this or whatever. And I think some of it's new. I think that we also, it's an exercise in civility that as we work through that and people are new to it or just aren't accustomed to it, that we take it graciously. It's usually a small interruption into a general conversation that we can handle in stride. So I think that our ability to manage those conversations effectively, I think, is part of the magic. So that's all I got to say.
All right, and Lois.
One thing I just wanted to say real quickly is we pushed the most questions back ever. So if incredible amount of producers, there was a mixture of us answering the questions a little slower than normal. I think it's partially my fault. But I think that we answered them a little slower. There were a lot more questions than normal. I want to thank the producers for doing that. Your questions were not lost. They were just simply pushed back into notes. So if you're not used to that, if you haven't had that happen before, in your notes section in Mukana, all those questions still exist. Just bring them back up tomorrow. This will be a bigger problem as we go through this, because we're having more and more people engaging. And so anyway, I just want to thank everybody for putting those questions in, and know that we're happy to answer them tomorrow. Just put them in tomorrow morning and we'll jump to them there. then I also want to underline how important it is for everybody to vote on questions. Lots of voting on the questions drives the conversation, as we go through that. Okay. So.
All right, we'll have Lois and then Alex, and we'll get to the second hour.
Well, actually, I'm not going to say anything there because I think I'm the one who comes in, and if there's nobody talking for a minute, I figure it's okay to say hello.
It is.
Yes, that's okay. All right, Alex.
And that's the opposite of that, is that I might find myself going on and on about motion for much too long. So please interrupt me, and I'm quite happy to go into a breakout room with whoever wants to follow me. So please interrupt me.
You cannot go too long on motion. I just want to make sure clear. As far as I'm concerned, Alex Goldner is the world expert in motion.
I second that.
Alex and Mark, if Mark Spencer or Alex Goldner is in talking about motion, everyone should just stop doing what you're doing and watch. You don't get, when Andy Carluccio's in Tlaloc and Elle are in talking about, and I want to do some more stuff with you, Alex, where we do actual sessions to hang out. But it's a real honor to have you willing to just get up there and talk about that stuff. So I will recommend there is not to tell Alex to stop talking, but for everyone just to watch, watch the magic. So anyway, just
pull up a chair and watch.
Pull up a chair. There's some real, every once in a while in after hours, I really see these incredible opportunities where we just go, wow, I can't believe we're doing this. And when Alex came on and started talking, I said this last week, but when Alex came on and started showing motion, I got 4 or 5 discords in a minute. And it was Alex Goldner showing motion in after hours, and it was totally Morpheus is fighting Neo.
I was just gonna say the same thing.
I was literally. So anyway, you should and I think we're going to see more and more of this in after hours, and so we definitely want to keep it as an open discussion. We don't want to take up the whole days on it, but having lab-ish things happening in us is something we want to encourage, as long as it doesn't take over. But if someone's going to talk for an hour or two and show really, really great content, I don't want to get in the way of that either.
All right. Well, we're at that second hour, and we're going to talk today about Alex and his studio build. So I'm going to hand it over to you, Alex.
Okay. Yeah. So, and we have if people want to say anything, I know some folks have been thinking about it. There is for the panelists, there is let me push that on deck so you can see it. There is a panel discussion. You can just throw your stuff into that. So I haven't gotten much further, although what I did do over it, let me show you where I'm at now. Let's see here. I'll just show you in Substance right now. I have a couple different apps that I'm using to work on that as an aside. And I'm just roughing things out. So this is where I haven't changed much other than filling things in. The thing that I kind of figured out, here, I've been kind of waiting to see what people had to say, and I've been thinking about a couple of other things. One thing that I did do in this process to make this more available to everyone, you'll see that inside the studio design, this is using Adobe Substance, and the reason that I used this was because this allows me to texture everything really quickly. I'm not doing a great job of texturing it yet. But I'll tell you a couple lessons that aren't studio related, but are USDZ related. One is, and this is from Chris Fritchie. I just want to thank Chris for telling me this, because I was I can't figure out why some things are textured and some things aren't textured when they come into Substance out of Cinema. And Chris was like, oh, you just have to have a separate material on each thing, and then Substance will know what to do with that. So Chris's tens of hours or hundreds of hours of doing this saved me that time. So what I did here is all I did, just so that it can be a little bit easier to identify, is that I separated this out. So I just gave each one of these their own surface color inside of Cinema 4D. And then I exported it out as a OBJ. What's interesting about Substance is it doesn't import USDZs very well, but it does import OBJs with that information. So I brought it as an OBJ, and then I save it out as a USDZ. Just threw some basic wood on here, gave all these, and this just makes it easier to understand what you're looking at. This is obviously not supposed to be a realistic render. And this is still where so I haven't added a lot of geometry. I did add the representation of the grid on the top. I haven't put the attachments in. So these will be most likely Hollander speed rail attachments, because this is going to be speed rail, which is slightly different. And then this is all maker pipe that I'm planning to do with that. You'll notice that some of these are longer than other ones, and I haven't completely figured out exactly which ones will all be longer. But the reason for that is this is where the walls are, and on at least once per wall, I'm going to push. And I'll put this piece into the model, but I'm going to push into the wall just a little bit, put a soft padded square that's about 1 decameter by 1 decameter, and just push it, decimeter, and push it into the wall. And what that does is it stabilizes the whole. When these are attached to all these shelves and pressed into the wall a little bit, it'll stabilize everything. Like nothing will rock at all. It'll become rock solid. When it's kind of just pushing up against it a little bit, and it won't. And in my past, I haven't damaged the wall doing that. But these will also be attached to the to this. I'm still figuring out that process, but that'll be kind of. And then what I haven't put in yet that I'm planning to put in is that these maker pipes will actually go up again. So there'll be another row that pops up above this that goes around, and the reason for that is so that I can put padding across the top. I'm gonna go ahead this week and build a model of the rest of the room so you can get a sense of what it sits inside of. But the ceiling's up here, like the roof is up here. So it needs to be. So I'm gonna put up another thing so I can kind of build this box, into that process. Now, for those of you watching, you can download this. And what's kind of cool about this model is that if you download it from in USDZ and you have an iPhone, you can literally point out to your living room, and this will show up at scale. Like it'll literally just pop into your view. I would go outside if you don't have enough space, or you can then scrunch it. You can just use your pinching and just pinch it down and set it down on a desk. So it is a USDZ model that you can kind of think about, walk around, and hopefully that'll help people kind of think through it. But I'm going to go ahead over the next week, build the fireplace here and the door and the other stuff here, just so that you can get a sense of what it actually sits inside of. I didn't worry about that when I was building it, but it's a problem. It's a problem there. So anyway, and then, I've been kind of thinking about the desk, but mostly was just worried about delivering this to you guys so you guys can play with it a little bit. So that's the introduction of where we're at. And definitely we wanted to kind of think through it and let people think through it. And I think we got a panel discussion.
We do. Go ahead, Chris.
So Alex, what I wanted to talk to you about was the shelf lengths. I think you said you answered a question for me midweek where you said that the longest shelves were like 11 feet long, I believe.
Yeah.
So the problem with doing that is, one, it's difficult to get boards that long. Two, it's difficult to maneuver those through your house. I know you can bring it through the sliding glass door that's behind the big shelves.
Right.
But it's problematic. Most sheet goods are 8 feet long, and I look at when I look at your model and I see those long shelves. If you get to a point where you go, I wish this shelf was 1 inch taller or something, for efficiency's sake, it's going to be a nightmare to change something. So what I would recommend you do is that from the front maker pipe to the rear maker pipe, you have extra cross pieces, not just every foot or 2 feet or wherever you think you're going to do it now. And what I would do is I would make the shelves shorter and uniform so that when we go into production to build all these shelves, we just build, a whole bunch of these things in your 2 depths, and they can sort of hook over if the black is the shelf and the silver is the maker pipe, and presumably there's a cross piece here. They can literally just hook over, and they would be staggered and easier to say, oh, I want this shelf to be double high or 1.5 high because I have a series of these boxes that I want to put on this shelf. And I think ultimately that will be much easier to produce and manage in the build and modifying it later, as opposed to having.
I think it'll also increase rigidity. I mean, I think it'll be a more rigid pipe, more rigid structure, because it won't be as continuous. So I like it. I like that a lot. And I think that what I would do is maybe double the density of the crossbars so that you have choices.
At least, yeah. At least double, maybe even more, because if, let's say you put
this turns into a lot of pipe and a lot of connectors.
But I know how much you enjoy building out of pipe.
I know, but I do have I don't have an unlimited budget for it, so I do have to fit all the things. I'm already like the part for me is I'm already cutting back on some things because I just can't afford them, right now, just I used up a lot of money to build the 2.0 system. And
then also, if you can put up your USDZ one more time, I want to point out the red desk in the middle, and then on the back wall, there's 2 large areas that I believe are like desk or work areas.
Yeah, this is a work desk, and then this is going to hold a bunch of synthesizers, which I'm going to put in. I'm going to model them this week and put them in. So you can see what they're laid out as. So this is a 6-foot span. It's a 6-foot table right next to me right now. So I know that it'll all fit in there. But that's what that is.
The big one is 6 feet, and the other one looks like it's about 4
feet
or so.
It's about 4 feet, yeah.
Okay. So I would recommend, I'm still not certain what the best surface for the shelves are, but from a practical standpoint, possibly just, nice plywood. Nice.
You mean this is nice plywood?
Yeah.
Yep.
But for those 3 work surfaces, the main desk and the synth desk and the soldering station, I would do those as the butcher block that we talked about.
And I'm going to I'm going to build a 3D model. This one here is already done. Like, it's sitting next to me, and it's actually goes up a little bit, and it's got like racks and stuff like that. And this just holds the space for it. This one and this, absolutely. Like, as soon as I saw the butcher block stuff that you sent, I was 100% in.
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely.
It's a nice surface.
It'll
it's
just
durable.
be cool.
It looks great.
It'll look awesome. So yeah, I'm in there. Yeah.
Lois?
Yeah, could you put that back up again? Thank you. If you looked at the shelves on the left, and what
These
I'm
ones?
thinking, those ones right there, what I'm thinking, I agree that cutting those in half instead of having an 11-foot span is a good idea. As far as suddenly deciding you want something tall on the second shelf, well, the easiest way to make something tall on the second shelf is to flip the third shelf up on end. Let me switch to me now. So you have this shelf and you should flip it up. If at the back of the shelf you have made little divots, notches, whatever you want to call those things, when you flip it up, it then settles down onto the pipe that it's been sitting on, which means that it's not going to fall down and hit you on the head. Maybe put a little clamp up there so that it stays up. But that way you can, on the instant, make a larger space than you had in your build.
And I think that kind of the way Chris is doing it here, just to show off here, I'm going to switch over. This is the USDZ model that's in Apple Preview. Actually, it looks a little bit nicer than the one we were just looking at there. So I think that what Chris was talking about when we do every other, I think that it gives us that opportunity. The one thing that will be hard is anything that's double wide, like long, would be hard. But I think otherwise, I think that doing the kind of the shelves either every other there seems to make sense.
If you had to have some items that were really long, like let's say you wanted to, I don't know, lay
chances are almost zero. Like that, that I would do that, but I could run across them too.
You could, or you could we could make a handful of double length shelves.
Right. And the thing is that for something like that, it would be 1 or 2 objects, and I'm not the kind of, like, we'll get things in here and then we will barely ever change them. For this one, for this wall, this is largely to be behind me during a shoot. So this one will change very little. Now, some of these other ones will change, we'll put different things in there, but it'll mostly be lots of little things as opposed to big things.
And is your intent to build this all in one sitting, so to speak, or are you gonna do phase 1, phase 2, phase 4?
I'm gonna do all of it at one time. Like we're gonna take our time figuring this out, and then I'm gonna build it all. So,
okay,
because I need to flip it. I mean, I could leave some of this out. I mean, the only part that I need is probably this section, and it's really this section is the only thing I need. So, to your point, the hard part is that once I decide I want to put a grid, I need I need all of it there to do that because it's all sitting on it. So once I decide I need the grid, I need all the rest of it. But we could build, to your point, I could build this by itself and we could see if we liked it. I'm much more interested in the iterative process, than necessarily, spending too much money and not using it. So I think that, yeah, we could look at that.
Okay, Jason.
I wanted to circle back to what Fenwick was saying, and one of the major projects I'm working on right now is a massive space. This is one of 3 very large spaces that's going to turn into a pretty large law firm. And just to bring that whole staggered thing home,
right?
There is a reason that it goes 2 up and then 2 down. Those cross pieces are super important for rigidity. I mean, it's probably code. Alex, my question is, because of building my own space, and I don't plan on doing shelving, but I am running into similar issues when I'm looking at a place that I'm going to be using for cameras. How do you intend to not, come down from the ceiling with power and with networking and with, SDI, whatever you need, without ending up getting in the way of your shot?
Well, I mean, so the thing is that there's always going to be places that are kind of outside of those shots. So you can always, in here, my plan is to do an umbilical cord, so this will be an umbilical cord that comes down from the ceiling. So, to wherever the desk is. So power and controls to the desk are the ones that are hardest to hide. As far as hiding, I mean, I can hide all kinds of wiring
I meant
into
the
these
desk.
areas. But to the desk, I plan to have an umbilical cord, and I'm really looking at one that I can possibly move around a little bit. So it might have some area here that it can kind of move around. But even if it doesn't, the desk doesn't. The reality is that the desk doesn't move that much as it rotates. Like the desk, there's not that, the room isn't that big. So the desk is really turning, and it's really finding a corner. And most of the corners, it'll be, there are times, so it's, if you look at it from above, this desk really lives in a very small area that it has to go into. So running an umbilical cord, and possibly one of the things I was thinking about is having the umbilical cord long enough and just having loops here. So if I move it over, I just rotate it over and then I run the cable to a loop, and let it loop in, and then I'll figure out what corner what corner or corners it might come down to. And the desk and the teleprompter are kind of the next big challenges as far as, figuring that out. And I'm going to work on that this week, and that'll be much further along next week. But the desk, I'll give you guys a first pass at the desk, and then Fenwick will tell me all the reasons that doesn't work. But that's totally good. That's why we're doing this. We're doing this so that we can all kind of think about it together. So,
Josh.
Yeah, and I kind of wanted to make a comment about my philosophy about the usage of the MakerPipe in general. I jumped on the MakerPipe train, and I've have my order has been playing with it. But I think the strength of the MakerPipe particularly is something where it's one-off, something you can rapidly adjust and move. You can build, you can sort of even prototype because it's so easy to change. I think the weakness of the MakerPipe system is when you have many repeating structures. So think of it like programming, like where you're just like replicating a process over and over. I don't think that's necessarily a strength of the MakerPipe. I think it's more of the one-off. So what I was thinking about that, when I see, Alex, I'm looking at your shelves, there's many repeating surfaces, and there are other solutions that can handle those many repeating surfaces. For example, what Rupert likes to use with the IVAR system, where you have this system that builds out. Since you did mention that cost was something that was a concern for you. I think that the really where the strength of the MakerPipe is being able to do something where you want to change and move things, and you don't have regularly repeating surfaces. So, for example, the IVAR system, has adjustment. You can adjust different shelves. You can put them together. You can configure different things and still have that compatibility. I think strength might be an issue. Might be a strength of this as far as rigidity. I will say with one exception though. So there are some different things as far as adjustability that if you did need, you could use. For example, this is your typical T handle that you're using, and I put one of these like little bike rack quick container. So this is something that you could adjust quickly and move. But for a shelf, I'm not so sure if the MakerPipe is a good fit, just because, like I said, those regular reoccurring surfaces. Right. I think the strength of it, as far as economically, structurally, something that you repeat over and over again. I think a system that's already, instead of reinventing that. Now, if you decided you wanted to derive from one of those and really go out on a limb and prototype, yeah, I think that's where the MakerPipe comes into play. But since you did mention that, the expense of it, I think if you add it up, something that's already built for that, that is adjustable might be a better fit.
Yeah, I mean, we might be able to do a couple different areas of it that way. I mean, the big problem was I went through a lot of the IKEA stuff, and I find that I get myself into a corner in IKEA a lot. Like I get myself like I think that it's going to be faster, and then what I end up doing is not doing things. Like I just end up not doing them because they're hard. And so my intention with this was to, by committing to MakerPipe, it was kind of forcing me to, it puts me in a position where I can easily change it. Like, oh, I really want this to be a little bit more this or that, or this thing that Chris came up with is a horrible idea, and now I want to do something different. And the problem is that, but what I find with IKEA is once I set it up, I don't move it at all because it's a pain, and maybe that the system is different, but I just found that myself, and when I say this, I say it as someone who used to build everything literally in my house was IKEA. Like it's not like I don't have any experience with IKEA and I'm these whippersnappers these days. I mean, I literally spent 10 years only using IKEA furniture. And what I found was it was always just not quite right, and it was always like, oh, well, that's what I can do. And so what I really like about this is that I could on a whim on a weekend decide I want to rebuild it. And the only thing between me and redesigning this is buying more EMT. And I have all the connectors that are all there. So you're right that the first cost is higher, but and I will say that I am looking at what you're doing. I was going to do all MakerPipe in my garage and realized how expensive that would be. And so I'm looking at the IKEA stuff that you're showing for my garage. For this, I do feel like it will move a little bit, and I also want to put myself in a semi-permanent environment so that I have a tendency so that I can kind of deal with it. I also think I'll attach a lot of things to a lot of parts of the thing, and I will admit I just don't like working with wood. Since high school I don't like working with wood. I did wood shop. I did all the wood shop. I did it every term, and I just got to a point where I like metal. I don't like wood. So Chris likes wood and doesn't necessarily use as much metal, but I find wood, I just built something with wood over the weekend, a big giant thing. And I was like thinking about how much
now you got to tell us what you built.
I built a big hammock. I built one of those Roman hammock holders for my Hatteras hammock. I like to call it my sleep ship. So that's what it looks like. It looks like a giant ship.
That's on my deck. Sleep yacht.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, I built it, and it came with the worst instructions ever. And just kicking around the imprecision of wood, where I'm like hitting things to get it to go together. I'm just like, I just like metal. Anyway, anyway, go ahead.
Well, the example I used, the IVAR, doesn't have to be wood, doesn't have to be the IVAR, but just something that's regular repeating. And maybe there's a section for the MakerPipe that you're planning on doing more prototyping, and then maybe half the section is something that's more set in stone?
Well, one of the things I'm going to propose is I don't even know if I need this many shelves. So like it's a lot of shelves. And so one of the things I've been thinking about is should I pull back on this? This gets into it. Like I may pull back on some of the shelves or do something different in different parts. And the IVAR, for instance, to your point, in this area over here will almost never be in camera, may never be in camera. So it might make sense that just sits there. But what I also start dealing with when I do IVAR is what height is this going to be? And how does it hook into this pipe? And how does it, there's a whole bunch of like, now I'm into like whatever IKEA heights they send me, and so now I'm getting limited by what they're doing rather than exactly what I wanted to fit it in. So that's that's where I get myself into it. But again, I don't know if all of these shelves make as much sense. I kind of view these three, like from this point until about this point, this is really my camera space, like what you're going to see in a camera. This section I'm looking at holding kind of raw, more, it'll look a lot more like what Rupert has, tons and tons of small, this is like tons of stuff that isn't camera ready, that is just in boxes, of stuff that's all here so that I can just grab wires and things like that.
That was actually another critique I had of the maker pipe. Now, of course, you can paint it, but the displacement of a 3/4 EMT is about 1 inch, whereas your wasted space, as far as your shelving, you're going to have to put the shelving on top of the 3/4 pipe. So you're already positive 1 inch as far as height clearance on there. And as far as how that'll look, like I say, you could paint it, but may not look as aesthetic. Just a thought.
It'll be really out of focus, I think. like that's the goal. Like I'm going to go deep into depth, so most of the time yours will be about what your background will be about as sharp as the background will hopefully ever look, while I'm working.
It does cover a multitude of sins.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, Rupert. Oh, go ahead.
So just to put the time taken or time needed into perspective, I mean, this is the IKEA. This is an example of the IVAR upright, and this is an offcut, and this just gives you an example of how much I've sort of fused it and adapted it and whatnot. But that's, in terms of Josh talking about repeating things, and this is the tallest version of this is about 6 inches short of an 8-foot ceiling, so you can get up there in height. But in terms of time taken, if I had the materials on site for that project, I could probably have that assembled in 2 hours.
Right.
Yep. And on your on the shelves that you've got there that are just maybe one section wide, is there going to be enough surface on the 2 lateral bits of EMT to support that shelf without it? I mean, you're going to have to secure that shelf.
Well, if we take on what Chris is talking about, we're hooking over them so that they're just going to hook over it. Yeah, so if we do that, I think we end up with a lot more stability. Yeah. I do think because I'm still going to have potentially bars under, we may have to think about bars underneath those shelving areas just to keep them from bending. Although if they're attached to that L, the 2 pieces at the end, they'll probably be more rigid. And then I will, because this is no longer really, I have to figure out the back. There'll be some back planes, some bars going across the back that are going to need to be there to stabilize the whole system, either diagonals or just straight across.
Alex, I would also recommend that the front and back lip of any shelf, this has a little groove in it. This is the Tallmaker ATEM Extreme Lifter and Angler.
When do I get one of those?
That it has a little, because you like metal. These will have a spine on it. That will be glued, to give it more rigidity.
Right. Yeah.
And then also, I don't know if I can show you. Do you, if you look at your Tallmaker, which may be within arm's reach, do you like the look of the exposed Baltic birch?
I do.
Okay, good, because that way I don't have to buy an edge bander.
Oh no, I don't. I hate it. I think that you should definitely invest in some more hardware and explain to your wife why you need it.
You're dangerous.
right, Lois, and then Chris, and then Jason.
Okay, so I was thinking about your cables coming down out of the ceiling, and you're saying, well, I can put this and loop it over there and loop it over there. You know, one
and to put it in
and I think-
perspective, it's one Ethernet cable and one power cable.
Okay.
That's the only
So-
thing that needs to go in.
So, but for whatever you're having to move something this way, you can take the sail method of it and put pulleys up there with a little, you know, so you can stand on the floor and just go like this, and the thing moves from there to there. You wouldn't want to do it for long expanses, but for what you're talking about, I think that might be fine.
The part that I haven't, that will be hard. I thought about some of those things of being able to move it around or even have it on a thing that'll spin, but there's going to be all kinds of lights in there as well. So there's going to be all kinds of things hanging from that grid. So that'll make it a little harder to just move something because it'll get pulled against those lights that are there.
And the other thing was looking at your picture, I noticed that on the left-hand side, well, let me pin that so I'll see what you're talking about there. On your picture there, on the left, in the back, there seems to be a gap between the shelves and the wall. Is that big enough for someone to walk in? Is that the purpose?
It is. Well, so I'll build the model out. I realized last night that I need to build a model. There's a sliding door right here to my deck.
Oh,
you know,
good.
and then so this is egress out to the deck, to the hammock. So anyways, the hammock is right there, sitting, calling to me right on the other side of this. You'll find that I don't sleep much at night, but I love naps. so anyway, so I sleep like 4 times a day. So it's the source of my creativity. Anyway, so but back here I'm gonna put also some of those places to hang cables. So what'll be hidden back here is, you know, some things that are more like opened little boxes and stuff like that to do that. And I may do that here too. Cause I kind of like the idea of it being in the cameras. But again, part of it is also figuring out the stability of this whole thing. You know, what I may have to do with the grid, if I choose not to set things down on the maker pipe, which may not be a good idea anyway, I have to plant things to hold the grid, which is possible. I have to put foots down and then put them up here to hold the grid separately. And holding the grid separately might make more sense anyway. So I have thought through that as well.
So one of the things about what you're looking at, let me unpin that so I come on again. Everything you have is right angles. If you were to put some cross things, you would get much more stability. Anytime you can make it a triangle instead of a rectangle, it's not going to shift, because if you do the math, you know, it just doesn't work.
What I'm thinking of doing is running X's across here, like you would normally do behind a shelf of flat metal that's just going to hold on to it.
And you don't have to use metal. You can use rope, you can use wire, you can use other things, because it's not going to have to support anything. It's simply not, it's going to just make it so it can't expand. Mm-hmm. That's all those cross pieces have to do. Right. You could even use wood.
Yeah, there's a couple, I'm not gonna use wood. Anyway, let's go. We got questions piling up, so we'll go through a couple more comments from the panel, and then we'll.
Chris, and then Jason.
I was just going to ask about the edge of the plywood, and I snuck it in. I yield my time.
Okay, there you go.
Jason?
I've been experimenting quite a bit in my own studio, and one of the most useful things that I didn't think I was going to need but really have ended up liking is a brad nailer. If you get a brad nailer, you can, put one nail in and see if the wood is the way that you want it, and then just pull it right back apart, and that's really handy. I've also been struggling with I love a natural background. I love the idea of a natural background. I can't wait to get this farther back from my head. Are you going to be doing anything with a key, like with a solid background that you're going to key on top of at all? Are you even building for it?
Yeah, there's 2 things that I'm going to do there. One is that this background that I have here, I think I showed this earlier. I'm going to have, so in right across here, I got to get the exact measurement, but right across this little plane, I'm going to have this thing attached to the grid. And essentially what I can do is just take this gray screen and just snap it into place. So all I got to do is open it up. So if I want flat gray and I don't want to have a set behind me, I can just snap that into place. I'm also going to most likely have it made of taking one of these and then taking out the gray and putting in a composite components green that I could pop up there as well, because they don't make that. Composite components doesn't make it, but I'm literally going to take composite components green screen and one of these to a seamstress and just have them take one out and put the other one in, and then I'll have what I need. so then I can pop a green screen up or pop a gray screen up, and that's the plan for there. Yeah. So that's my plan.
All right. Next question.
Okay, first question of the second hour is from Stefan Fischer in Würzburg in Germany. He asks, Alex, you want to build your 24-inch teleprompter by yourself. How much do you want to spend and what for? Any suggestions for the panel?
Yeah, so I'm probably going to make it a little bit bigger than 24-inch. If I'm going to go ahead and build it myself, I'm no longer constrained by current market trends. So I'm just trying to figure out exactly how big I want it. It's probably it could be as much as 40 inches in size, so that I have a nice big one that I can look at. Again, now that I'm no longer constrained, I can do whatever I want. The biggest constraint is really the cost of the glass. So I'm using mirror. I think it's called teleprompter mirror or something like that.
80/20 mirror, yeah.
No. This is a specific company. Teleprompter Mirror is the company I'm going to buy the mirroring from. And if anyone's interested, when I do the order, I'm going to let you all know, so that once we figure out exactly what we want, I'm probably just going to use some very basic glass as I figure out what works and doesn't work. That cost me nothing, because this mirror glass will cost somewhere between $500 and $700 for the piece of glass. To do this, but this is precision teleprompter glass, and then my goal is to keep it under $1,000, but now make it bigger than what I would have gotten if I had bought a 24-inch. And so that's where I'm kind of leaning towards, and how big it is I haven't quite figured out yet, but it's going to be big, because a lot of it is that's what I'm looking at. I'm trying to get to a point where that's a lot of what I'm looking at when I'm presenting. So I really want to be able to see everything I need to see.
Next question.
We're going to combine two questions now. Todd Rains in Allen, Texas asks, are you planning to paint the maker pipe? And we also have a question from
we just go
Keith
through them.
Bacini.
We won't combine them. So we'll just answer each one as we go. Don't worry about it. We'll just get to it and say we talked about it earlier, but we don't want to try to combine them. It's just hard. I know that's a new thing are we planning to paint the maker pipe? And the answer is not immediately. My plan is to leave it as raw, and then and just hook it in.
All right. Next question.
The next question is from Douglas Carmichael. How does Adobe Substance differ from this? Is not a second hour question. That seems to have
no, it
sneaked
does.
in.
It does. It is, because I was
pardon?
showing Substance and Cinema 4D and how I put this together. Substance is just a texturing system. So I can't build the models in Substance. I can only surface them. Cinema 4D's ability to export USDZ with textures is very low. Like it can't really put them out any way that is useful. So the pipeline that we've developed is to export OBJs, and this is largely, I want to thank Jesse Schwartz and Chris Fritchie, who really spent a lot of front lines against deeply embedded trenches, so a lot of charges to figure this out. But Cinema 4D as OBJ, first you create individual surfaces. You draw any texture onto these models so that they have their own surfaces, so that it defines them, and then you export it out to Substance. And in Substance, which is part of the Adobe thing, it's actually not part of it. You subscribe to it separately. Then you drop all the stuff on the substances. The surfaces in Substance are amazing looking. Substance then exports. You export a texture or materials out of Substance, and it happens to put out a USDZ that you can use. So anyway, that's how we've learned how to push out relatively good looking USDZ models. And we'll build one that's probably almost photoreal by the time I build the actual real one. I'm just fiddling right now. What you'll learn with me is that I worked in a time when we didn't have fast computers, and so I tend to not expend much time on things while I'm thinking about it, and then I'll back up, throw everything away, and build everything exactly the way I want it at some point.
Next question.
The next question is from Samuel Nordvik in Norway. Alex, how are you planning to design your teleprompter?
The way I tend to do it is, let's see if this is going to work here. There we go. So I will tend to start in some kind of drawing program. So I'm going to, I'll start drawing out like I want this here, like this, and I'm going to think about my supports, and then I need this to come up at an angle, and I'll start thinking about all the things and drawing it. So, so that's what most of the stuff I do looks when I start is that I start drawing on things and figuring it out and trying to think through as much as I can. For me, everything is iteration rate. So how fast can you make a new change? So things like an erase on a whiteboard is really, really useful. Then I'll go into most likely cinema or so. I may the teleprompter one as a thought process. I may use the new Blender because it just got released. So I may try and I'll swear a lot and put it together and make it all work. But I'll figure out how to do it mostly in MakerPipe. And again, I'm really using MakerPipe as a thought process because I just think that we can figure things out quickly. And then I'll post it for all of you and then let you pick at it. Like that's what we're going to do on Mondays is me posting ideas and having you guys pick at it. So that's key. And I would say that is part of the design is to show it to everyone here and have you tell me what you would and wouldn't do about it. Because this conversation is, I think, valuable for all of us.
All right, next question.
The next question is from Keith Pacini, who asks, are you planning to use shrink wrap on the pipe?
I did think about it, but I'm not going to. Not at least not now. And a lot of that has to do with iteration. Same thing with the painting, is that I just want to iterate quickly and move it around. And I think that it's out of focus. It won't matter. And so I'm going to kind of go through that.
Next question.
The next question is from Miguel Lopez Waterman in Astoria, New York. Could you provide videos of a walk around with the model in your space in AR?
Yeah, I can do that. I will do that sometime this week. The thing to do also is anybody who has an iPhone can do that. So anybody, if you're in Discord and you have an iPhone, there's a USDZ model. When you download it, it will be at scale. And so you could literally walk around and even point out things as if you were in the building and talk about what you like and don't like about it. And my goal is to post every week. It'll be the end of every weekend because usually weekends are when I can work on this, is every week I'll post an update of the new tools and it'll all be in USDZ. So anybody who has the ability to do that can open it up and look at it as if it was in front of them. And I think it's kind of shows you a window of a near future.
So we don't need an app or anything. We're just pulling up.
I'm trying to, as long as I keep it under 50 megs, you can literally text it. I could text it to you. And when you click on it in messages, it'll just pop up in front of you. If you have an iPhone, I think probably above. 10 or above. Yeah. So the ones that are really interesting are, of course, the ones with the LiDAR. It just locks into your scene. Now, what's weird is if your space isn't as big as my space, you'll see my model composited in with your model. Like it'll look like as if it'll look like the two of them were merged in a horrible, some kind of horrible time and space mess. So.
Very neat. Next question.
Next question is also from Miguel Lopez Waterman in Astoria, New York. Have you considered lighting the wall behind the shelves for yet another dimension of design control?
Yes, but I'm waiting for you to show me what you want me to do. So that's so we'll put it up there. We absolutely want to light the stuff behind it. But as we build it out, we'll figure out what makes sense, and I'm hoping that you'll give me some input on that.
That sounds like a good lab for after hours.
Well, this will be, in a lot of ways, again, what I want to do is use these Mondays until we have it built to talk through it and talk through those processes. And maybe we can do some of that in 3D. So I know that now that I posted the models, Tlaloc, if he had extra time, can throw in little lights and things about where he'd put those and visualize them for us so we can talk about it. But I'll put up a more complete model before the end of next weekend.
Sounds good. Next question.
Yep, I can't hear you.
We can't hear
Dennis.
you.
Apologies. The next question is from Vincent Alvarez in Bellingham, Washington State. Will this have characteristics at all like a Faraday cage?
I don't think so. I don't think it's actually enough to create those characteristics.
Nowhere near.
Yeah, so I don't think it's really going to have that. My house, for some reason, already has a lot of those characteristics. So I don't. I mean, my phone barely works in my house. So I don't think it'll make it any worse.
Next question.
The next question is from JJ McKenna in San Rafael, California. Are there any useful plexiglass options that can be used as a teleprompter glass?
The optics aren't good enough. So optics, you can do cheap ones and you can do quick ones with plexiglass, but essentially looking through plexiglass at an angle is like the worst thing you can do for an image. So it won't last. You really have to buy glass to make that work. And it's high performance glass. It's not, so you can't just go, I mean, you can go anywhere and relatively inexpensively buy something locally, but again, when you really want a teleprompter and you're going to use it all the time, you want to get the real thing.
Okay, next question.
The next question is from Douglas Carmichael. Would a good analogy be that MakerPipe is the Isadora of building systems?
Yeah, I would say there's a couple of them. I mean, I think that it's one. I think that MakerPipe is a similar. It's a relatively inexpensive one. 8020 is another good example of that. SpeedRail is another good example of that. The IKEA stuff that was shown is another. So modular systems that you can put together. But I think that MakerPipe's a lot of fun.
Next question.
And the next question is from Stefan Fischer in Würzburg, Germany. I recommend you are flattening the lower edge of your desk, the side that's facing towards you, so that you don't have a sharp edge facing towards your lap.
I like that idea. But I think it'll be okay, but it won't be a sharp edge. It'll be a butcher block. But I could see potentially some angle there to give me more space.
Chamfered edge. Ooh.
Yeah, that would be pretty.
We're talking about tapering the whole thing down. I mean, it'll be a squared off edge with probably a round over.
I kind of like the idea though. If only I knew, like it would be fun to get the butcher block and then kind of cut it at an angle at that far end. Fenwick's looking at me like I'm a fool.
Fenwick's like, oh, do I need another router?
Don't do that. Okay. Yeah, we're gonna need some tool. That's all.
You're gonna have to make me a model. I don't understand.
Okay, we'll work on it. But I think it's a good idea.
Next question.
The next question is from Douglas Carmichael. Would there be any stability concerns with MakerPipe instead of proper studio furniture?
I think only if I think we can probably make it more stable most of the time, unless but proper bracing and proper design is really the key to the operation. Go ahead, Chris. I'm sorry.
I would highly recommend doing a small MakerPipe purchase and building a sample to get and load it up.
Mm-hmm.
Let's build a 4-foot wide shelf, load it up, and double check that it has the stability and rigidity that you imagine in your head.
Yeah,
I'm concerned that this is not a good enough solution for the size that you're trying to build.
We'll find out.
And I've never touched it, so maybe I'm totally wrong.
I have all I have to do is go out and get EMT pipe. I have all the connectors now. So I don't have enough for this actually for the studio. I just got the Pro whatever. So I've got a couple hundred connectors and a couple different options of those connectors and so on and so forth. So we'll
do you have an appropriate saw to cut this stuff?
Not yet. I was going to get a chop saw because I need it for I need a chop saw for the speed rail.
Right.
So I was going to get a chop saw. Because I can't cut the speed rail any other way. I can, but wow, is it a pain.
So technically, chop saw usually means just a straight down.
Mm-hmm.
Josh, can you cut this with a typical miter saw if you have the appropriate blade?
You totally can.
I mean, anything
with a 90-degree angle.
Yeah, I know that a lot of aluminum, you can cut with just a wood blade. It's very common to go back and forth. But I don't know what EMT pipe is. It steel? Is it metal?
It's steel. And just a tip that I think if you really wanted to go crazy and like quick modifying something, one of those handheld portabands, you can just like chop would be perfect. You don't have to worry too much actually about what we call in the industry the baloney cut. Where your axis isn't off. Just make sure that the part you measure to, you cut down away from it. That way you won't add length to it because it's going to seat all the way to the end of your pipe. So barring a perfectly perpendicular cut, if you cheat on one end, you'll still maintain the same length that you're after if you get the
Plus one on the chop saw miter saw. I bought a chop saw and it was annoying. So chop saw / miter saw is pretty good.
I owned one for a long time because I did a lot of speed rail, and so it got disappeared with my other company. But I am going to go back to it. I mean, I used it all the time. so to me, like anything else, anytime someone suggests anything else, I'm kind of like, I don't know why I would do that. Like I have a pipe. This is how I cut my pipe. so anyway, that's how I cut all of my. I cut a speed rail once by hand, and then I was like, I need a machine that does this. Like literally one cut, once. And I was like, I need a machine. And then I pinged a friend and I said, what machine do I cut speed rail with? And he's like, this machine, and he handed it to me, and it was like a miter with a chop saw, and it was like, oh. Because then you just go like this, and then you pick it up, and then you move on. So anyway.
Next question.
The next question is from JJ McKenna in San Rafael, California. Are magnets part of your design process in this build, Alex?
Not in this build. So there will be some point where parts of this set get converted to 80/20. So once I know, like what I don't want to do is commit and cut 80/20 to start with, but there will be parts where I do that. And when I do that, then you'll know the magnets are coming. The reason he's asking is that I've talked about in the past that I can build whole sets with magnets. In fact, I'm designing one right now that's probably 30 feet by 16 feet by 20 feet that is all 80/20 with magnets. And what that means is that I can swap the set in hours. Like an entire look of the entire set can be swapped in and out in hours without any tools. So I might be the only person that's crazy enough to do that, but I do it. I did it. I've done it a few times in the past.
We'll see how that looks. All right. Next question.
That leads us very nicely onto the next question from Stefan Fischer in Würzburg, Germany. What is 80/20?
80/20 is extruded aluminum with slots. I think that's the easiest way to say it. It is every every control room that I work in, everything else is all using 80/20. So what you'll see is it's an extruded pipe or square pipe or whatever that has lots of little slots in it that are extruded with it. And then you can have all these little things that all attach to it. And you can attach them to each other, and you can run cables and there is literally a 3 centimeter, 4 centimeter, I would call it a manual, but most people call it a catalog of stuff that you can buy for 80/20. It is at a whole different level. And when I build things that are gonna, like, this is what we're gonna build for a client, or this is what we're gonna build for our studio, this is 80/20 is what I use.
Can you show us that next week?
Oh no, I don't know if we have any in the studio right now, because I can show it when we start working on the other project. I can show some 80/20. Yeah,
there's a link in Mukana.
Yeah.
Josh?
Yeah, this is what 80/20 looks like. And I will say, comparing the 80/20 to the maker pipe, the strength of the 80/20 is that you have the slots on 90-degree angles where you can infinitely adjust, but limited to 90-degree angles, whereas things attached to the maker pipe is on a round surface. So you could attach at 360 degrees.
Next question.
The next question comes from Josh Kaufman in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Assuming you have an isolated equipment rack with noisy and loud machines, what are your plans for the data transport deriving from the rack? Transport protocols, physical track, etc.
Data transport derived. So you have isolated equipment.
How are you getting
stuff from the server room to your room?
Yeah, so I already have routes to my server room from my office that were kindly put in by someone else. So I will be putting anything that's making a lot of noise. At first, everything's going to be at the beginning. Everything is going to be in the room, and I'll have to deal with getting rid of it. But that's why it's so useful to have one little umbilical cord go out to somewhere that I'm going to put something. There's not that much that has to run in here, but once I figure out what I want, the reason I'm not running it out immediately is because it will take extra runs, and I got to figure out what those runs are, and I got to figure out what I want to do. And so I don't want to, I've learned not to make things more complicated than they have to be until they have to be that complicated. And so, so I'll iterate quickly and then move forward. To go back to the last question just for a second, this is the, this is what 80/20 looks like in one of the sets that I built. So let's see if I click on this. So this is what it looks like kind of connected. So you can see kind of it as an erector set. So what I did is I built this as a substructure, little gap behind the wall to make sure that I could get behind it. This was kind of the set that we started, building towards as far as doing this. This was our DC build. I don't know why I took a picture of that. Here's like literally these are windows that are or shelving that's in the 80/20. So you can see the shelving here, and it just slides in and then snaps in with magnets. You can see the magnets now being added here, that hold the entire wall structure. So these you snap these in. You can snap them across. There's the magnets that we were using, but there's windows that we had lights behind, shelving, so on and so forth. To make all of that work.
This is how a lot of TV production is done, right?
None that I know of. None that I know of. Like this is the only. Like
this is a lot more expensive.
They hook things to it, and here's you can see how much you can do with a hanging ceiling. Anyway, that's what 80/20 looks like, and the master controls everywhere are using it because you can just build out huge desks and everything else to make that work. And what was the other one? The advantage of MakerPipe. Oh, and the uses. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh no, the next question.
Oh, was that?
So, yeah, the last question of this hour is from Douglas Carmichael, who asks, what's the advantage of MakerPipe in this use case versus 80/20?
It's cheaper and faster. So it is, the 80/20, if I did this for the whole office, it would cost me 10 grand at least, to build it out. And once I cut it all and figured out I didn't like what I had, I'm just kind of stuck with it. So the advantage of the MakerPipe is that what covers most of the area is EMT and relatively inexpensive and relatively easy to adjust and cut and move around. So what I believe is it's a great way to prototype. It's a great way for me to figure it out. It'll stay in some places. When we go, hey, this is what we really want, I'll either build it out of 80/20 or I will, sit down in my garage with an arc welder and build something really kooky that is the same structure, but what I want, and so those are, but as a prototyping tool and as a, agile development tool, I think that it's the MakerPipe gives us a lot of the ability to make adjustments very quickly and I'll talk about it. And it's easy for us to think about, as you can see. So anyway, I think we may have one question that snuck in there.
Josh wanted to jump in on this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was going to say, Douglas, too. I actually thought about a hybrid approach where you would use some MakerPipe and some 80/20. And I think a lot of the advantages of the 80/20, having that regular surface where you slide up and down, depending on the attachment, in a lot of cases, you may be better off with something like some of the hacks where you can quickly adjust something with one of the bike crimping tools, or just loosening the joints and sliding things as far as adjustment. And like I said before, you can attach something at any angle as opposed to 90-degree segments.
Yeah, and one of the things there is that I do think that the bike tightening that was both shown on the MakerPipe site when they were showing how to build their own little space, as well as just what Josh was showing, has me really thinking about how useful MakerPipe will be as far as being able to just, again, agilely move things around and figure things out before we have to lay concrete. When we build with something more expensive, which I think I will do, number one is I probably won't do it in this house. I'll probably do it somewhere else just because my wife would like the room back. But if I go into that much infrastructure, I'll probably move out of the house, but we will know what we like, and we will have been able to adjust it and keep moving and changing until we made a decision of like, this is the perfect setup for us, or for me, to make that work. I think we had one more question.
Yep. Next question.
Yep. And the question is from Chris Widener in Lafayette, Indiana. Are you planning on using bus drop cable support grips for cable strain relief?
Something like that. I haven't figured out exactly what it is, but yeah, that's the kind of, I have to figure out how it interrelates to the, or how it interfaces with everything else that's being hung there. So that's the part that I haven't figured out yet. Cool. All right. Well, that was another good, R&D session, chit-chatting, talking about this. I posted the models inside of Discord. People can download those. You can add more to them, take more
Where in Discord
away.
are they?
There's a studio design. I think there's a studio design section there, that a new channel. I don't know exactly where it is there, but you'll see 3 models that you can download there. So go ahead and download those, play with them, take notes. You can discuss it in there. I'll keep an eye on it as well. And then we're going to keep on talking about these on Mondays until we figure it out. I don't have any. I have a set that works okay right now, so it's not like I have to build it by a certain date. But we'll keep on modeling it. When we think we're ready to pull the trigger, we'll pull the trigger. And I do agree that we should. I'm going to probably get some EMT this week, so we'll probably put some stuff up, so maybe next weekend, so that you guys can see it. And we'll talk about things that we've learned about what works and doesn't work. And what's great is we can put that up at a certain size. I think that probably even something 6 feet high might make sense, just so we get it big enough that it makes sense. And we'll start, playing around with ideas. I think prototyping small sections makes a ton of sense. So thanks, Liberty. Liberty's first show. Well done. So thanks, Dennis, for doing the Q&A. Well done. And so I'm excited. I very much enjoy being a panelist, I will say. So
and Lois for switching the show. I think that was
Lois,
her first
thank
time.
you, Lois, for switching the show. Yes, thank you. Well done. I didn't see it because I never see it. Like, we're in the panel, so I see the panel, but it looked good from here. But Lois, thank you so much for stepping in and doing that. So we've got a lot of new folks kind of taking over, which I love. So really, really well done to our production team, and thanks to our producers for the great questions. Too many questions for us to handle. That's great. That's the direction we're trying to go. Now, what we have to do is, as panelists, we have to get a little better at moving quicker, as well as for producers, is to vote more aggressively to really set up the questions of where you want things to be, both up and down, to make that decision. Makes it easier for us. And then for the panelists, thanks for showing up. It's great to have you here. It's great for you to. I really appreciate sharing your knowledge with everybody else and being part of the conversation. And tomorrow we have we're doing Mixbus tomorrow, so that should be a lot of fun. And we will see you now all in after hours. Remember that Wednesday we're changing the Isadora to 9 a.m., not 2 p.m. All right, thanks.